Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live. Retail workers are feeling the pressure as we head into the school year and childcare options decrease. We'll give you the details on the decline of morale for many exhausted employees. Plus, he popularized wholesome eating and gave millions of Americans access to organic and locally sourced foods. John Mackey joins us to discuss his latest venture, a new book about conscious leadership. That and our poll of the day happening now on LinkedIn News Live. Hello, I'm Susie Jackson, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. It's Wednesday, September 30th. Here's a quick look at some of the top stories professionals are talking about today. Disney is cutting 28,000 jobs across its U.S. theme parks. The closures are due to weak attendance. About 67% of lost jobs are from part-time positions. Also seeing cuts at Orlando's other parks, Universal and SeaWorld. Business schools are seeking a spike in demand. That's after many of the top schools relaxed testing requirements for admission. Wharton, Columbia, and MIT all reporting double-digit application increases for the fall semester. And Amazon introducing a way to pay with your palm print in its Amazon Go stores. The innovation links your print to a credit card on file, for some raising questions about privacy and the future of cashiers. For more stories like these, you can check out the LinkedIn News module to the right of your LinkedIn feed, or if you're on mobile, by clicking into the search box. We have been polling professionals on the LinkedIn News page, and we want to hear from you as well. As grocery stores and food retailers prepare for fall, they are stocking up on essentials for busy shoppers. We want to know, what's your priority when grocery shopping? You can vote throughout the show today by dropping your comments into the stream. You can say A for health comes first, B if convenience is key for you, C value for budget, or if your answer is D, something else, add some context, let us know. We're going to be checking in on results at the end of the show. Grocery store employees are one of the many groups of essential workers that are feeling the pressure both at home and at work. A recent report in the Washington Post paints a picture of an exhausted workforce that is having to juggle childcare, online schooling, and working at jobs that put them at risk of COVID every day. Joe Millord, who is LinkedIn's editor covering frontline workers, joins us now. Joe, what are you hearing about this? We're seeing a lot of this chatter across LinkedIn. I'm wondering what you're hearing from members about these precarious situations.
Right. Well, one of the more profound responses that we've gotten is on the subject of childcare, and it boils down to one simple fact, which is that these parents who double as essential workers cannot be in two places at one time. So imagine if you're in a school district in which remote learning is still mandated for the next couple of months, but you have to go to work and to still pay the bills in this dire economic times. You have a problem, obviously. And even in certain situations in which there is a solution to that problem, there are still worries that come from the solution itself. I've heard from retail workers who say that they've been relying on extended family to help them take care of their children while they're at work, but that gives them worries that they can put their extended family members at risk as well. In other cases, I've heard retail workers who have a spouse who's also working in retail or also has an essential job, and their solution to their problem has been to stagger their schedules, meaning one spouse works during the day, one spouse works at night. Of course, that brings issues about fatigue, not being able to really rest when they get home because they have to help their children with remote learning. So there's a big issue with fatigue, and also the idea that there are no good solutions to the problems, even when the solutions are available.
Yeah, it is a really tough time. You're illustrating that really well. You're talking about fatigue, making choices about childcare or the safety of loved ones or the safety of yourself. It's a tough time in retail. I want to actually pull up a chart that's looking at the state of retail a little bit. It's pretty dire. We see the sector has eliminated hundreds of thousands of jobs, a lot of bankruptcies we're seeing during the pandemic, and also deaths. We're seeing some of these folks who are on the front lines who are unavoidably being exposed to COVID, suffering the greatest thing they could suffer. How are people coping with this, Joe?
Right. Well, We can start with the last bullet point. When it comes to safety, we know that by now that a lot of the safety protocols are very much in place and common now, with shields at the checkout lanes, everyone being masked in certain stores. We know a number of states have widespread mask mandates. But one of the things I've heard is that in the midst of all this, there is an increased workload because the job is now harder when you take into account the constant need to be restocking more so than before, and also put in safety measures. But on the other side, for those who have suffered those job losses, I mean, we've seen stories of people even resorting to the gig economy now. As you know, we had our top startups coverage this week. And one of the themes is the emergence of some companies that employ part-time drivers, part-time couriers, like DoorDash. But of course, these solutions come with less safety. There are less benefits that come with these jobs, or no benefits in some cases. So what will be interesting to see going forward is whether any of these jobs return, and can they return depending on if we have a recovery from this pandemic and the economic downturn that it has prompted.
Yeah, I want to say hello to some members who are joining us in the stream now. We have Celia and Andrea, who are both from Florida, Kristen from Ohio, let's see, Ahmet from Turkey, and Dolores from Texas. Thank you all for joining us on LinkedIn News Live. Joe, going back to that, what you were saying, it's a really tough situation. I'm wondering, what kind of things can management do, or are you seeing management do, to try to improve these situations for workers?
Right. Well, with respect to the problem that we mentioned earlier in childcare, managers, those who are actually working in stores, have a big hand to play in whether their associates are able to find a better solution. I've heard directly from some managers who have said unequivocally, we will work with associates to accommodate their parenting needs. And the way in which that accommodation happens is, again, staggering hours, moving around the schedule, trying to work with those who have spouses who have different schedules to see if something can be worked out. Also, at the company level, we've seen during the past 6 months a lot of different types of bonuses instituted. So there's one-time bonus payouts and also bonus pay, or hero pay, in which there is an increase to the hourly compensation that some associates have received. Of course, some of these benefits have ceased. They expired over the summer, and I actually heard from one assistant manager, who said that those bonuses did increase morale, and personally for him, increase his zeal to do his job. But that with those going away, that effect went away as well. And there's one thing that he told me specifically that captured some of the messages that I've heard both publicly and private from retail workers, which is people need to understand what it's like for other human beings who are putting themselves at risk for low pay and little recognition. Maybe not all retail workers feel like that, but there is certainly a sizable portion that I've heard from that are feeling that sentiment, as the benefits of doing their increased work has gone away during the summer.
Yeah, it's something for us all to keep in mind too, not just the people who are in the management above those folks, but us who are going out into these retail situations. These people are really doing a lot to try and help serve us, and also to earn enough money for their own needs. It's good to hear you saying that some employers are still being really flexible, trying to be creative, sometimes with spot payments, things like that. I hope that we can see that continue to support these workers. Joe, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
That was Joe Millord. He is our frontline editor here at LinkedIn. Next, you know him as the man who brought us Whole Foods Market, a place where shoppers can trace their produce and meat products and more readily access organic local foods. But CEO John Mackey is on another mission too, and that's reimagining leadership. He has a new book out called Conscious Leadership: Elevating Humanity Through Business, and he attempts to answer what value-driven leadership means and how to marry passion and purpose. John Mackey is joining us today here on LinkedIn News Live. I want to welcome him to the show. Hello, John.
Hi, Susie.
John, I want to start by focusing on the workers in your stores. We just heard what the challenges are like for retail workers across the sector. I'm wondering that through your lens of conscious leadership, how are you working to support them?
Well, the team members are an incredibly valuable stakeholder, and it's one of our core values to help our team members to grow and be happy. So it's something we think about all the time. And With COVID, the first thing we did was wanted to make sure that we had as safe as we could have a working environment. And so Whole Foods was very early to have temperature checks for our team members to wear masks, to have our customers wear masks, to sterilize our grocery carts, things that people might touch, social distancing in our stores. And so we've made our working environments as safe as we could. We also already, from a team member standpoint, we already pay minimum wage at Whole Foods is $15 an hour across the whole company. And of course, most team members make more than $15 an hour. So we've been paying better than our competitors pay. And we've been thoughtful and generous during the pandemic to try to accommodate our team members as best we can. So these are challenging times. These are challenging times for everyone in America. This is the worst year of my life, honestly, 2020. And I think I wouldn't be the only person saying that. This has been a very difficult time for everyone. And we care about our team members, and we've done what we can to keep them safe and to make them happy. But, as long as we're going to be social distancing and everybody's going to be wearing masks, you don't have that same kind of personal connection that once we had pre-COVID and we will once again have post-COVID. So I'm like everybody else, just want to get on the other side of this.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a tough year for me, for everyone out there. It's good to hear that you have employees front and center when you're thinking about health and safety, when you're thinking about fair wages to help them out and through this time. Do you feel like those practices, have you seen them help morale, maybe compared to competitors who aren't able to do what you've been doing?
I think morale at Whole Foods is still pretty good. I mean, you can always find people that are unhappy anywhere, but here's the thing. For many years, Whole Foods Markets invested in our team members and sort of made deposits in the cultural bank. And during this time of COVID, there have been withdrawals being made because it's not as easy to make the deposits. So we're certainly not overdrawn, but we need to get back to normality. You can't do this indefinitely. It's not good for people. It's not healthy. We need people. We need social connection, and we need intimacy. Whole Foods is a huggy culture. Nobody's hugging each other and not shaking hands, and it's just not as fun as it used to be. And you just can't do that indefinitely. So I'm very hopeful that we'll see 2021 begin to move back to normality.
So you're talking about the culture there. It's a huggy culture. The culture a lot of times comes from the top. It comes from the leadership. I'm curious about how you define conscious leadership and how you see that reverberating throughout the culture of Whole Foods, especially now at this difficult time.
Susie, well, of course, the book goes into detail about it. But in essence, conscious leadership is simply being a leader who's more aware, who is more purpose-driven, who tries to lead with love, who has high integrity, who tries to find win-win-win solutions to make sure all the stakeholders are flourishing and prospering, and continuing to learn and grow. It does a lot, and a lot of it is doing inner work to become more conscious. Business people in general are very busy. That's why they're called business people, right? And as a result, they're very task-oriented. They have a lot of lists. They work long hours. But so this requires you to not just be task-focused, but to do the inner work that we need to do to become more emotionally intelligent, more socially aware, better at communication, simply more caring. So conscious leadership is about caring more deeply about the people that you're working with, people on your team and the people you're responsible for.
It's so important to keep thinking about those people, keeping them at the center, keeping that conscious leadership front and first and foremost. But I'm curious about this moment in time. We're seeing more and more leaders maybe have to be in a more uncomfortable zone about thinking in that way, about thinking about supporting employees and thinking about who they are as whole people. What do you say to those kind of leaders who maybe this is not second nature for, but it's uncomfortable. It's a time where they're being asked to do that more than ever. Talk to those kind of leaders who aren't used to this and might need a little assistance.
It's a challenging time. I mean, you have to try to create value for all of the stakeholders, your customers, your employees, your suppliers, your investors, the communities that we're part of. You have to do it all simultaneously, and the whole system's under stress, so it's more difficult. All I know is that ultimately you're no better than your team. And so you have to really prioritize the team. As I say, the retail business in some ways is simple because management's job is to hire the very best people we can find, make sure that they're well trained, and then to try to make them happy in the workplace, because their job is to make the customers happy. Happy team members results in happy customers results in happy investors and happy communities. So it's a virtuous circle. It's a system. It's all interconnected. So what I would tell the other executives is that it's not easy, but you have to take care of your people. You have to do all you can to help them flourish and be happy, because they're the key to having your business be successful.
I want to pick up on that idea of happy team members. I know you've said that since Whole Foods joined Amazon, you've become much more data driven, and that's, in your opinion, led to some better decisions, some better outcomes. But I'm wondering what's one layer beneath that. I think a whole change from, as you said, kind of gut level management into data driven management could be kind of jarring for some. I'm curious what it's looked like in the ranks of Whole Foods to make that cultural shift.
It's not like there's been this big shift. These things are gradual. You over time you take on new processes. Cultures they're not stagnant. They always evolve. They're always changing. People go, new people come, new values come in. It's alive. It's a living system. So it's continually shifting, changing, and evolving. And Whole Foods certainly is. But on the other hand, cultures have a certain resilience to them. They're based on higher purpose, core values, certain leadership principles, and those tend to maintain continuity and resilience. So it's both. And I think Amazon is they haven't tried to cram things down Whole Foods' throat. They've been very respectful of our culture. And as a result, we are changing and evolving, but at a pace that is quite sustainable for us, one that is not disruptive.
And we've got some folks joining us in the stream. Michelle says Whole Foods usually gets awesome team members. She says she always enjoys shopping at Whole Foods. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Alaha says conscious leadership should be empathetic. I think John would probably agree with that. Would you, John? Conscious leadership should be empathetic.
Of course. I mean, the second chapter in the book is Lead with Love. And leading with love means part of it, it's complex, but part of it is being more empathetic, more caring, more compassionate, more generous, with appreciation, with gratitude, with being able to practice forgiveness. And empathy is one of the keys to that. So empathy is one of the bases for emotional intelligence. The other basis is self-awareness. But we need empathy. And I think the leaders that we're developing today are more empathetic. I found personally that I would say IQ is kind of like a necessity to be a good leader, but increasingly emotional intelligence shows how far you'll go, because increasingly it's so relationship oriented. And if you can't have empathy, you're not going to have good relationships. People aren't going to trust you. So I think empathy is absolutely essential.
We've got some other folks in the stream weighing in. Christopher says we're all going through a major transformation right now. I think 2020 is a big year. A big word for this year's transformation. Maybe always not in the best ways. Christine is a Whole Foods employee. She says she loves working for the company and what it represents. Thanks for weighing in, Christine. Maria says that you're right, John. She's glad to hear you support the health and well-being of workers and customers, thinking about that whole person. And we have Dolores, who says she appreciates all the frontline workers taking a risk every day to provide goods and services we need to be comfortable at home. Thank you all for joining us on the stream today. We're talking with John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods and author of Conscious Leadership. John, I know Whole Foods, amongst many other grocers and online merchants, sales shot up during the pandemic. What do you think happens to the balance of in-person and digital shopping as we come out of it?
It's a good question. I don't think anybody really knows for sure. I mean, we've seen our online sales triple in the last year. So that's a huge growth. Thank God we were partnering with Amazon, because they were really able to help deal with scaling up that technology probably a lot better than Whole Foods could have done on our own. I think some people will never go back because they really like the convenience of shopping at home and they've gotten in the habit of doing it. However, I think people also like to shop for food. I do personally. I I'm a foodie. I love food. I like tasting it. I like seeing it. I like to cook. I like figuring out what I'm going to be cooking and getting the food myself. So I think once people feel safe, a lot of people will still occasionally shop online, but I think we're gonna, I don't want to say we're gonna go back to the just pre-COVID, because I don't think it'll ever be quite the same, but it'll increasingly begin to resemble the way it was. So I don't think a year from now our online sales will be as high as they are today. I think some of those folks are going to return to in-store shopping.
All right, so the pendulum swung out pretty wide, and you think it's going to drop back, not quite where it was before, but it's not going to stay quite as far
That's
out.
exactly right, Susie. The pendulum is not going to swing back to where it was before, but it's not going to be as wide as it is right now.
Okay, so you've mentioned some of the technological developments that Amazon has brought into the relationship. I'm curious, we heard in the top of the show about the palm print reader in some of their Amazon Go stores, so you could just pay with your palm and walk out. What are some of the other technological developments that Amazon's brought to Whole Foods, and what can we expect to see in the future, especially given that that's something that could eliminate the need for a cashier?
Well, obviously, I can't talk about the things we're going to be doing in the future, because I probably would not be allowed to talk to you or anybody else in the media if I start telling the company secrets away. There are some cool stuff that we will be introducing the next year or two at Whole Foods and Amazon's fresh format that they're launched and beginning to roll out. But I can't talk about it. So I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a big deal. So I'll just use that as a teaser. In terms of the technology, the main thing Whole Foods has done is, of course, get us for delivery and get us for online shopping. They've really put a lot of resources into that and made it part of their Prime membership program for free delivery. So that's been a great thing. Other technology has been a lot of stuff you wouldn't see behind the scenes, helping us with our systems, the way we gather data, the way we communicate with each other. Increasingly, Whole Foods has begun to migrate and will continue to migrate fully onto Amazon systems. We've migrated our catalog onto the Amazon website, their homepage. And so there's just a continued linking up of our technology to Amazon's technology. And Whole Foods is fully committed to being technology by Amazon over the long run. So there's just going to be more and more Amazon technology powering Whole Foods.
Well, we've got Michelle in the stream here saying that she, like you, is ready to go back to the grocery store when it's safe, says she's a foodie and loves seeing the products up front before purchasing. I've got another question here from the stream for you, John. Aaron wants to know if there's any advice about recruiting and retaining new talent with all the changes we've seen in the job market.
Well, unemployment's high right now, so there's a lot of people looking for jobs. So it's an employer's market at this point. So you're going to get probably better, if you're an employer, you're going to get better people because there's less competition for those folks. So you're going to be able to get better talent, I think, available right now than there might be. I mean, pre-COVID, we were extremely low unemployment rates, and talent was being bid up. We were seeing lots of pay increases were occurring due to the market demand for talent. So right now that's reversed for at least for a while until we get back towards more full employment. Yeah, I mean, you're no better than your team. If you hire and develop a great team and you can retain it, you're going to be successful. And if you can't do that, you're going to be less successful. So I always think one of the reasons I've been fairly successful in business is I've always had a great team. I've always been able to attract great people that stay with Whole Foods for decade after decade. And frankly, they're the real reason Whole Foods has been as successful as we've been.
We've got a question here from Roberto, who wants to know about that team. He's curious about the interaction between sales reps and partners. How is that being handled now with new products coming in if business isn't being done quite in the same way in person, face-to-face, that it might have been before?
It's being done virtually. It's being done online. It's not as good. You can't. They'll have to, like, let's say people have products that they want to sell to us. So they're sending those products in advance to the buyers, maybe not to the office. They probably have the buyers' home addresses in a lot of cases. And then the virtual meetings are set up, and we talk about the products, and they talk about their plans, and we decide whether or not we're going to roll those products out to more stores or It's all just being done virtually because we don't have any of those meetings right now in our offices. That's actually, we're just not doing it. So until we feel like it's completely, that the COVID threat is, we do think it's declining, but until we feel like it's really gone, we're not going to be encouraging those meetings in our offices.
Yeah, let's see. We have a question in the stream here. I hope this is a fun one for you. Where's the name? Let me find the name. Sorry, it's a live show. Sometimes it's hard to keep all these wonderful comments. Let's see, Spencer, thank you. Spencer wants to know how you got started in this business.
That's a longer story but basically, to tell you, the real quick origin story was I moved into a vegetarian co-op when I was 23. I wasn't a vegetarian. I never lived communally before, but I had a food awakening there. I learned about natural and organic foods. I learned how to cook. I became the food buyer for the co-op. I was on fire about natural, organic, and healthy foods, and I just couldn't get enough of it. So one day I came home to the co-op, and my girlfriend was there, and I said, Renee, you and I should start our own store. And she thought that was a great idea. And so that's what we did. We started a store back in 1978. I was 24, Renee was 20. And it was called Saferway. And that's how I got started. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I made a ton of mistakes, but we learned quickly. And we moved to Whole Foods 2 years later and changed the name to a bigger location and merged with another store. And that's the short origin story.
Well, I'm glad all that happened in the late 70s so that we could fast forward and Zoom. And now you're here through Amazon. You can come right to our doors in this time of need in COVID when it's hard to get out to the store, excuse me. John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods, thank you so much for joining us today. And you can check out John's new book, Conscious Leadership.
Thank you, Susie.
I want to check back in on the poll that we were asking you about throughout this show today. It's related to this topic of grocery stores. We want to know what your priorities are when you are grocery shopping. Let's see. Many of you, looks like 43% said health comes first. Some saying convenience is key. Some saying value for budget. We had responses from so many of you throughout the show today, so thank you for dropping those comments in. Tomorrow, my colleague Caroline Fairchild will be speaking with Emmy-winning show host and CEO of Aussie Media, Carlos Watson. Be sure to tune in at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific here on LinkedIn News. I'm Susie Jackson. Thanks for watching LinkedIn News Live.